Hello everyone and welcome to another deck deep dive video. This time featuring the 122nd Infantry division that was included in the Fate of Finland DLC as the one German division next to the two Finnish. So as you can see, some Finnish units are involved here as well. And it's one of my favorite divisions nowadays. So that's what these deep dive videos are about. Divisions that might not be the most meta, but might be a bit underrated. And this is one of these. For a couple of reasons, in my eyes. It got a buff lately. And since then, I think it's a pretty nice division. It's a good all-rounder. And it's one of the few divisions I like to play balanced. As you have not the fastest division, but you have good artillery. You have good 2000 meter range. And you have a really nice infantry tab. With now 3 pretty high level infantry cards that help you out big time. But with that said, let's have a look in how I go from tab to tab, and let's start with Recon. In the Recon tab, we start with the BMW, a unit that most people don't use, and I usually also don't use. The reason why I use it here is you don't have a crazy amount of radios in this deck, and the BMW comes with a radio for 10 points. You can hide them early on, like if you have 10 points over, just put them into a light forest somewhere where usually there is no combat, that is relatively close to the front line, or behind a big tree line where there's also no combat. And then you have radio on the front line that will help you out in the late game or in the mid game with the artillery that uses the radio. The 150mm with radio is really effective. The LEFH, even with the price reduction, I'm not a big fan of it yet. I might have to test it more, maybe I will use this, but currently I use the stolen, or the taken over F-22s for the rate of fire, for counter battery, and so that my big artillery guns don't get annoyed by counter battery. That's currently the playstyle here. And the rest in the Recon tab here are the double snipers, just an amazing unit. Double sniper damage, kills units pretty quickly, stuns units pretty quickly, gives you good firepower, and you don't have a crazy amount of long range firepower in this deck, so having a bit of extra is nice. And then the Kev OS, which are for 20 points a pretty solid unit. They have 3 Zombies, 6 SVTs, so they deal good CQC damage. Holding a tree line or like a light forest fight with these is pretty cool. And they are also a recon unit, so you can use them for good recon. Fusiliers and Spähtruppen in my eyes both not that amazing. Spähtruppen were pretty helpful in Normandy 44. Here they just don't do enough for 4 hit points, for 20 points. And Fusiliers are, if they would have slightly better weaponry or better availability, I would be considered taking them, but not the biggest fan of them in most decks. So that's my recon tab. The Finnish always having good recon, and the BMWs, as I said, for the artillery. Now let's move on to the infantry tab. And the infantry tab starts with 4 cards in A, 2 cards in B, 2 cards in C phase, which usually is enough to get you through a pretty long game. 91 infantry cards overall. And as you can see, there's not that many grenadiers here. And there's 2 special infantry units that are only in this division. One of them is the Storm Grenadier, which just got an availability buff. Went from 6, 12, 18 to 8, 16 in availability. So a pretty good boost. I take them with 1 more veterancy. They sadly don't have the 864, but rather the 853 veterancy curve. But 5 is still fine in my eyes for a unit that has 10 MP44s for 25 points. If you hold a light forest with these, they are amazing. And in normal CQC circumstances, they still do a pretty good job. And then the 2 units I helped them out with in A phase are the Lahertiunta, which is a TNT unit that also brings a Latti ATGM AT rifle, which has 30 penetrations and a really good rate of fire, plus it deals 3 damage, so it's pretty capable of taking down enemy armor, light armor, quite quickly. One of the best AT rifles in the game. Then the Ersatztruppen, just to hold the front line, just to spread out. And as you can see, not any infantry with MG in A. That's why I need the snipers. That's why I will need the heavy MG and support tab, so that I can hold longer ranges with this. Really, your infantry is not the tab where you want your long range fighting capabilities to be, because all your other tabs provide you with that already. So these here are for more CQC or mid-range engagements. Pioneer Führer, I think in my eyes, always one of the best leaders. If it gets run upon, it can still throw its TNT and maybe even survive after the TNT blew up. Grenadier Führers are a bit more expensive, and I don't know why. Like, they have the same weaponry, and TNT is better than smoke, so really recommend the Pioneer Führer here. Cavalry, also same thing, has an AT weapon, but has less weapons, has no TNT, costs 5 points more. Not really helpful. The Sturmführer, you don't really take it for the damage. And yeah, if you want to take a second leader, I guess I would go for this, though its availability is a bit off. So if you want to have a B-faced card, maybe Grenadier Führers are the way to go. But with the prices, I'd rather don't take them here. In the artillery tab, I have a artillery leader in B, so I don't waste an infantry slot for this. In B-phase, my infantry are a grenadier, so that I have a bit more long-range capabilities. All with veterancy, as this is currently the way to go. Only these not, because TNT doesn't really care about veterancy. As such, you can't take with veterancy. They are not really there for fighting anyways. They're just there for being your meat shield. Grenadier Führers, Sturmgrenadiers in B-phase as well, as that's the last phase where you can take them in. And as I said, both these cards are pretty good now. As I said, the veterancy curve, not amazing, but still decent. And the 11 guys still can shred quite well for you. And then in C-phase, a Grenadier. And another really good unit now, that went from 25 to 20 points. And at 20 points, it's just great. It's basically the better version of the SS Legionaries, which was the infantry unit, one of the infantry units that made 70s, or is one of the infantry units that makes 17 SS so good. And these guys here are just better. They have an automatic rifle, so they have long-range fighting power together with the SVTs. And the automatic rifle can also fire in CQC, plus they have Somis instead of Berettas, which are just even one step above that. And they have the Molotov, and they have one more hit point. So overall, an elite unit here. One of the best infantry units in the game currently. Yeah, I would say somewhat similar to Krupat's Shachistiki and so on. And one of the reasons why 122nd is amazing. And kind of my 358th of the Axis currently. Like, they are pretty similar in design, I would say. And that's my infantry tab here. You could consider obviously cutting some stuff if you feel like this is too little infantry, but I don't think you have any amazing options left. So I go with this. Something that I always wonder is if I should take the Pioneers instead of the Lajette Junta, but I feel like the Suomi and the Latti are pretty helpful. And so I'd rather take them because they have the same availability, both lob TNT on the enemy, but I think the Latti is pretty helpful in the deck where you don't have that much AT left on the rest of the infantry. Storm Pioneers I don't really need, and so on. So yeah, that's why I leave these two open. Tank tab is all about the stock life, and you get even one of the really good stocks, the stock Force, which have the 10 extra frontal armor, which makes them immune to Sherman and T-34s on most ranges, or like next to immune on most ranges, helping out in those infantry fights a lot, tank fights a lot. And then stock 3Gs. As I play balanced, I want to have elite units in A phase that are as cost efficient as it goes to hold on against Vanguard and Maverick Storms. Vanguard sadly not that much in the meta currently, but once it comes back, this will help out more. Stock 3G with 2-star veterancy, really solid unit, and yeah, then 1 card in B, 1 card in C, relatively simple, so that you get up to still have enough tanks to get you through the phases. And the stock 4 you can only take an A and B, so I took it in B phase, as there also the veterancy is pretty decent on 1-star veterancy. And then let's move on to the support tab, where you get a lot of nice stuff. And One first thing, you don't see any open plus ammunitions here. The reason for that is that I take my artillery with supply cards. So I get 6 supply trucks here, but you might want to consider maybe dropping one of these cards for a supply truck if you feel like it. For me it worked out fine so far, but I can see that it might be an issue for some people, and yeah, then I would recommend dropping the Stew or the Flammenwerfer. Though I like the Flammenwerfer in A to help out my Sturm Grenadiers and my TNT units to win CQC fights. MG42 is essential, as I said, no long range firepower in the infantry tab otherwise. And only having the Dowd sniper teams on 2 of those as well only ain't enough, so the MG42 is key. The Stew gives you 2000 meter range HE, just like the IG. I would say consider keeping the IG, and if you have to cut it, cut the Stew. You don't get quite as many. You already have Stooks that can help out, and IG-33 just does so much insane amount of damage. Plus it's cheaper, plus you get more. So I really like the IG in this deck. I would not drop it over the Stew. So, but I like the Stew as well because it gives you a mobile platform, obviously, and you can have a nice Stook push, like Stew plus normal Stooks to just try to roll over the enemy. So this is my support tab. As I said, I tried to be as slim as possible and cut the open blitz ammunition out of here so I can get more combat units out of here. But if that doesn't fit you, consider putting the supply card back in. In the anti-tank tab, you get some more great units. One that got buffed just lately, the Tank of the Junta, went from 35 to 30 points, and it's a pretty nice 10-point hit Panzerschreck unit for it. It can deal some damage to the enemy infantry if it has to run. It can survive some tank shots and so on, and the Panzerschreck obviously is an amazing weapon. But I'm still always on the edge about taking this one or the normal Panzerschreck. As the normal Panzerschreck can come in BMWs, and obviously if you want to just sneak behind the enemy lines, the 10 extra points don't really help you that often, but I feel like the Tank of the Junta is a funny enough unit, and you can also use it in infantry bulks without fear of it just getting annihilated, and have a push with it in your infantry. And as I said, your infantry doesn't have the most amazing anti-tank capabilities, so for that reason I go with the Tank of the Junta. The Latti is a unit that you want to use early on. 15 points for 2 Lattis. They snipe any transport, they snipe any armored car really effectively, so having them in infantry bulks or just rushing the front line so that the enemy is forced to unload is key here, especially as your transports are not always that amazing. In speed, Martyr is great as always. Pretty good tank destroyer, nice stealth, has a good rate of fire, has the aim bonus of tank destroyers, so I always like using these. Though the Martyr 2 is maybe not the best one of them, as it is somewhat pricey and so on, but overall I enjoy it a lot. Then the 2 cards of Pak 40s to just keep you clean. If you really want to go late game, you might consider taking one of these in C-Phase. Veterancy is sadly on the Pak 40s though, not that amazing. But I take my 1 card in A, 1 card in B, because only relying on the Krupp in B, which is a pretty pricey vehicle, feels a bit risky to me. But the Krupp is your key unit if it comes to destroying heavy tonks. Like if the enemy brings out IS-2s or King Tigers, then this is what you want to bring around. And yeah, sometimes I just don't use them, but they also have solid HG shell, and the amazing thing about the Krupp is the rate of fire. So once the enemy's heavy tonk connects with you, you usually can shoot it down quick enough so that it can't disengage anymore. And that's what you want to use these guys for. And they are even somewhat efficient against medium tanks and so on. Like the normal Pak 43 has the issue that it just doesn't shoot fast enough, so normal medium tanks can easily overrun it, and with the Krupp that doesn't happen to you, but obviously you pay the extra price for it. So in my eyes, a pretty lovely unit as well. Obviously if the enemy has a lot of bombers or efficient artillery, you are a bit risky with this, so be careful when to bring it. It's not a unit that you want to bring around in every game, but it can be the tool that saves you against the heavy tanks. In the anti-air tab, you have a problem. Cause like feelings currently just ain't good enough. Once they get buffed, this anti-air tab will be way better. But currently you have to rely on 20mm alone, and so you have to be careful. You only get 9. 20mm on their own don't do much, so you always want to have them in pairs or triples. And be careful. You don't want to lose them, because if you lose all your a couple of them, your AA network falls apart pretty rapidly. And this is really one of the weaknesses of this division. But you at least have some fast Fokker Wolves. Only bad resilient ones, but together with the 20mm, you usually can make it work. You usually are capable. Like if you micro your air somewhat well, you should not get air spammed too heavily in this deck. And the artillery tab, as we looked upon earlier already, the leader is to help out your infantry in B phase. Maybe to go with the commander in a balanced deck, get 2-star regency on everything. The Schwere Feldhaupt beats the 150 for dishing out damage, winning the long game. Just sitting back and keeping the enemy forcing themselves into you, especially in a balanced versus balanced matchup with some heavy artillery that dishes out good amount of damage. And then these to keep these alive, basically. Or just annoy enemy anti-air or artillery by just keeping them spammed with these. So as I said, maybe with the now cheaper leichte Feldhaubitze 18, I may consider changing these out, as these then also would profit from the more radio of the BMWs and so on. But that's something I will have to test out myself. If you want to do it, I can see the argument, but I still think the LEFH is not amazing even on 70 points. Like, the price reduction was good, but it might need 5 more points off or so still. In the air tab, it's a relatively good one, but not a heavy one. Like, you don't have any heavy bombers, it's all Ju-87s and Fokker Wolves. And there's one trap in this, and this is the Fokker Wolf F3. It has 500 kilogram bombs, and it's a Fokker Wolf, right? But different to all your other Fokker Wolves in this deck, it has bad resilience versus medium resilience. The other Fokker Wolf bombers have medium resilience. Yeah, they come only with 50 kilogram bombs, but they can actually dive into some light enemy AA and not die to it. Whilst the Fokker Wolf F3 is slower and has less resilience, so it can get shut down by even lighter enemy AA quite easily. Plus it comes with pretty shitty availability, so I would recommend going for the F8s instead of the F3. Even though you lose out on the big bomb there, but you got big bombs with the Ju-87s. And they are cheaper, they have better availability, and if they are both only usable if the enemy doesn't have much AA, so yeah, in that case they're quite similar, and so for 40 points you even get more payload. And the D5 can defend itself with its 20mm, so the enemy can't just run in a fighter and hope to shoot it down. Especially light fighters you can even just head on, and against everything else you can micro. D5s here, because I like them. Another consideration instead of the D5 might be just getting Recon, but with this I can even overwhelm enemy AA defenses if need be. If I really need to air spam, if I run into enemy heavy tanks that I can't beat otherwise, then I can air spam with this deck as well. Usually not the way to go to though. Usually you want to win this deck with your medium tanks and your elite infantry that usually outtrades most infantry tabs. Plus 2000 meter wrist support, plus good artillery. Like, none of these tabs is the best in it, but all of these tabs, other than AA, are above average in my eyes. So, in my eyes, one of the best balanced decks currently around. And I hope you agree. If you don't, let me know in the comments. What do you think? Should I change this deck? Or what do you think about this deck in general? And if you liked the video, consider leaving a like. And consider leaving a subscription if you want to see more of this content. And with that said, I hope to see you next time. Bye bye. Have a nice day.